Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week on MMA Junkie, we take you on a quick fire spin through the week's big talking points. And we've got a packed show for you on this week's episode with Danny Segura, Gorgeous George, and Goze all primed and ready. So let's do this. And where else can we start but with the main event at UFC on ESPN Plus 36 on Saturday night? Colby Covington is back in the win column after he added the name of Tyron Woodley to his resume. And after the fight, he called out both Jorge Masvidal and Kamaru Usman. But the picture at 170 looks pretty crowded right now. So guys, where does he fit in to your particular picture at 170 pounds? And who do you want to see him fight next? Options galore on this one. We'll put 3 minutes on the clock. And Goze, you can lead off.
Listen, guys, for me, Leon Edwards is the fight that makes the most sense if you look at how a division is supposed to play out. Leon already started the foundation for it with his tweet, but that's a perfect world. And we don't live in a perfect world. So we all know how the UFC operates, and there has to be some kind of heat. When it comes to Colby Covington, you need a storyline, right? And Jorge Masvidal has heat. He's a guy that's coming off a loss, so he's kind of tied to Nate Diaz. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to think outside the box. Yeah, you'll get your turn. You'll get your turn. Nick Diaz. I like Nick Diaz being that guy back because it's almost like a little bit of a placeholder fight. It doesn't really interrupt things too much. Think about the heat between those two guys. Covington will be out of his mind. Can you guys picture this? So on top of it, yeah, you'll get your turn. Masvidal says put him and Nate on the same card. Boom! Fireworks, guys.
I don't believe it. Goze has brought props, everybody. I don't know how you're going to match up with this, Danny. Who's your pick?
Well, I'm first in shock. I didn't know that Jorge Masvidal and Nick Diaz were going to make an appearance in this show. So I'm kind of shook right now. But if we're talking business for Colby Covington, I think a fight with Leon Edwards makes sense. I mean, Leon Edwards is currently looking for an opponent. He's been looking for an opponent for quite some time. He's looking for a big name. And Colby Covington is just turning into that, a big name in the division. We know that Jorge Masvidal, it looks to be tied up with Nate Diaz sometime in the coming months. Obviously, the title picture, Kamaru Usman will be fighting Gilbert Burns. So it seems the options are quite slim for Colby Covington. I think a fight with Leon Edwards is the move. And on top of that, why not do something that nobody in the division is doing? And that's fighting Leon Edwards, who's on a crazy streak right now and who's killing it. I think it would send a huge statement if you were to pick up a victory over Edwards.
Yeah, absolutely. That gets my vote. Get the Brit a fight. He needs one. George, who's your pick?
Well, I think it sucks that there's no fans because Woodley and Covington should have been even bigger because of how raw that matchup was for the last 2-3 years. I mean, they've been going at each other. You know what I mean? And we got it. It was just anticlimactic. Reminded me of what we went through with Pacquiao and Mayweather. It was just a couple years too late. Well, that one you could argue was maybe 5 years too late. This one was probably about 2-3 years too late. I don't want to miss out on Covington versus Masvidal. About a year, maybe a year and a half ago, they were calling each other best friends, and now that's no longer the case. So that's the one I want to see. Jorge had his shot at the title. So did Covington. They both want to get another crack at that, but it's Gilbert Burns' shot. So why not put these guys together? And then we're spared having to see Masvidal versus Nate Diaz. That one's been done, guys. One guy was a badder mother effer than the other one. Why do we need to see that again? So I'm all for that one and put it on the same card as Burns and Usman. That way we get that insurance.
Yeah, I mean, the good news here is there are so many different options for Colby Covington right now. He's in a good spot at 170 pounds for sure. Someone who's not in quite such a good spot right now is Donald Cowboy Cerrone. He was in action in the co-main event on Saturday night, and he was effectively saved by a point deduction against Nico Price. Price penalized for an eye poke, and that ended up with the fight as a majority draw. Cerrone, speaking afterwards, said it was the worst performance of his career, but he also said that he's not quite ready to hang him up just yet. So, guys, if you're Dana White, how do you deal with this chapter in Cowboy's career? Do you steer him towards retirement, or do you take a different tack with your legend and keep one of the most beloved fighters in the mix for a little bit longer and let the man go out on his own terms? We'll put 3 minutes on the clock. It's a tricky situation, this. Danny, I'll let you have first crack at this.
It's an extremely tricky situation. I would say do not let Donald Cerrone go out on his own terms because that means the man will be fighting from a wheelchair at some point in his career. But I do think, he does have a little bit of fight left in him. We saw him fight against Nico Price. He took some big shots, managed to weather the storm, come back, win the third round. So he's a fighter that still has something to offer. He might not be the Cowboy of old, but certainly still a game fighter that can compete. We also got to keep in mind that losing streak that he's on is a little bit deceiving, losing to Conor McGregor, Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje. These guys are world class. I think Cowboy Cerrone is no longer in that same level of elite. But that doesn't mean he can't be in fun fights and entertain fans in this era, no? So I think, Donald Cerrone, you can run that back with Nico Price, or if he were to go back down to 155 pounds, I'd love to see him fight Bobby Green. I think that'd be a fantastic fight. And again, not a super elite guy, but still someone with a big name and someone that can help him put on a show.
I love the Bobby Green shout out. I like that. That's a nice one. George, what would you do with Cowboy in this situation?
Yeah, that was a great pull, Danny. Bobby Green was not thinking about that at all. They had an incident or close to at the Mandalay Bay at one of the expos. It didn't really escalate, but still, I'd love for them to bring that back. With Cowboy, look, it was a year and a half ago, again, because of how frequently he fights, that he fought Perry, Iaquinta, and Hernandez, and I think we were all saying, wow, Cowboy still has gas left in that tank. Danny already went through the killers that he's lost to. Those are killers at the top of 155. So in this fight, I'm not all for running it back unless it's necessary, but this one was pretty different. So, and it seemed like both guys were open to it. So I'd be open to it too. But guys like Cowboy, if they are going to sail into the sunset, there's a few other guys in that same spot. They're not really money fights. They're just kind of like legend fights. They still got it. So it's not like we're insulting the sport, but you're Matt Browns, your Nick Diaz's, Carlos Condit, if he gets past Court McGee, I don't know. I mean, I think they're on the same team, but Cowboy left it. So who knows? I take it back. I think he was even at Cowboy's house recently, but still, some of these guys just fight because it's necessary. Diego, I don't know. Whoever's left, get those guys in there and match them up against Cowboy.
George still wants him back in there again. Goze, do you think he's still got a bit more to give?
I think he's got a little bit, but, I don't like the things that have been coming out of his mouth, especially here at the end. The guy's a pioneer and he's done so much for the sport. I think that he deserves to go out the way that he wants. And Dana should have a talk with him, but I think two guys that have known each other for so long should be able to come to some sort of an agreement. And the way I would handle it is right now, take Demian Maia and Chimaev, break that off, all right? Give him Demian Maia, two guys that are going towards the end of their career. Let them end their career together on the same card. There's no hurry, so hopefully you can do it in front of fans the way they deserve to go out with a big audience.
It's almost as if you know my running order, Goze, because you mentioned Chimaev, you mentioned Demian Maia, and guess who we're going to talk about next? That's right, the biggest needle mover from Saturday night. Khamzat Chimaev starches Gerald Meerschaert with his first serious punch of the fight, 17 seconds at middleweight. And that's 3 consecutive victories in the UFC for the Wolf. He's been strongly linked with a fight with the aforementioned Demian Maia. But given what we've seen from him so far, guys, do you think that's the next best move for him? Or do you think there is a better matchup for him out there? If so, who do you want to see him face next? We'll do 2 minutes on the clock for this one. And George, you can lead us off.
I think the ship sailed on Demian Maia. No disrespect to Demian Maia. He's already proven he's one of the best. That's why he fought for a world title at 2 different weight classes. And that's why he's basically been, I guess, a little bit of a launching pad for some of the ones that eventually wound up fighting for a world title. You had to get past him. Some did, some didn't. But no, I think Demian Maia, look, he's hanging back. I think I like seeing him fight in Brazil. And I'm hoping that in the next 6 months, things will open up. But if not, I think we just rattled off some names with the previous question on who I'd like to see Demian Maia. But Khamzat, yes, at welterweight, Neal, Edwards, put him in the mix against those big boys. He's ready.
George says he's ready, Goze. Do you agree with him?
I think he is. He came out practically unscathed. It was a great performance. And honestly, I think we need to get him a fight ASAP. And I'm not really liking that Demian Maia fight, as I mentioned before. So really a guy that I think would be good for him to test his skill set would be somebody like a Stephen Thompson. I think that different type of style matchup is good because this guy, although he's done a lot to prove himself, we still need to see more of him. And I think Stephen Thompson's going to pull more of him in that type of fight. So that's the guy I would want to see him go up against.
Yeah, if you can look good against Wonder Boy, then you are definitely right up there with a shout at 170 pounds. Danny, what do you reckon?
I'm with you guys. Before this knockout, I'm like, okay, yeah, the Demian Maia fight sounds fun. It sounds interesting. But after seeing what Khamzat did to Gerald Meerschaert, I'm like, I don't know about that. So I do think there needs to be another opponent, but most importantly, even above opponent, I think Khamzat needs to pick a weight class here. Yes, he's having success at 170. Yes, he's having success at 185. But we know that doing a title run at both weight classes, especially with the amount of contenders and the amount of fights that contenders are getting, it's going to be really tough. So I think before we start thinking about an opponent, I think it's time for Khamzat to dial down on a weight class and put his effort in a specific category, because he clearly is a title contender. He clearly has the skills to be something, but in order to be something, you need to be something somewhere, and that's picking a weight class. So I'd like to see him pick a weight class before getting any opponent, or before talking about getting opponents in different weight classes. He needs to be either a middleweight or a welterweight fighter.
Awesome. The Octagon is back at UFC Fight Island this weekend. UFC 253 kicks off a 5-event run in Abu Dhabi. It features 3 fight night events, bookended by a pair of huge pay-per-view cards. Now, obviously, the title fights are going to dominate the headlines, both on MMA Junkie and everywhere else. But what non-title matchup has captured your imagination the most ahead of the UFC's return to the desert? Loads of great fights to choose from, guys, but just give us one each. We'll put 2 minutes on the clock. And Goze, you can go first.
I gotta go with Brian Ortega and the Korean Zombie, guys, just because we've waited so long for this fight. Personally, there's a lot of heat here. There's the incident that they had. There's so much unfinished business. And really, when you look at it stylistically, how much fun is this fight? On the feet, it's great, but I really hope that it gets to the ground at some point. And when you look at the division, you have Alexander Volkanovski at the top, and then you have a bunch of guys that are kind of just on the same playing ground. This will open things up a little bit. So for me, this is a very important fight, and it's the one I'm looking forward to the most.
Absolutely. And Danny, what's your pick?
I'm going to go with Holly Holm versus Irene Aldana. I think this is a title eliminator bout. It's pretty clear that Holly Holm, obviously a legend in the sport, in women's MMA, and Irene Aldana, a really exciting rising contender, someone that I'm very high on. She's got great boxing, great cardio. She just knocked out Caitlin Vieira in her last bout, so she's now proving to have knockout power as well, and great technique. I think when you look at the women's divisions at 135 and 145, there isn't much hope for someone to dethrone the champion, the GOAT, Amanda Nunes. But if there's someone to do it, I think Irene Aldana is the perfect contender to perhaps give Amanda Nunes a tough fight and perhaps create some interest there.
George, what's your pick?
Sandhagen and Moraes. I think Sandhagen, think about what he's feeling. He got finished pretty quickly by Aljamain Sterling, who rightfully should be fighting for the next world title against Peter Yan. And Moraes, he's the one that gave Sterling his last loss, so I got to imagine he feels like, I got to prove myself. I was a champion at WSOF, now known as the PFL. I won some big fights. I got there, close to the finish line. I wasn't able to pull it off. So I just feel like both guys are working their asses off to improve themselves. I like that one. And since I'm going last, I'll just clean up a couple. Makhachev against RDA. I love it. Makhachev's been wanting these types of fights. He's got one. And then Juliana Pena, for whatever reason, I've just always enjoyed covering her. And she's got GDR. And I just think it's pivotal in that division. And, I think the stakes are high.
Yeah, chucking Magomed Ankalaev versus Ion Cutelaba. They've booked that fight about 35 different times. Hopefully it will go down at UFC 254. But before all of that, Saturday night, it's UFC 253. Israel Adesanya taking on the hulking Paulo Costa in a fascinating clash of styles in the main event. So, guys, let's set the over-under for this fight at 3 rounds. Are you going to go over or under for this fight? Is it going to make it into the championship rounds, or are we going to see a finish inside the first 3? Break it down for us, guys, and give us your pick as we round off this week's show. We'll put 2 more minutes on the clock. And Danny, you can lead us off.
I'm going to go with over 3 rounds. One, because I just want to throw that out in the universe, because I want to see as much minutes possible of Adesanya versus Costa. Is a fantastic bout. I haven't been this excited for a bout in that division for quite some time. I mean, this bout is just perfect. And on top of that, if we analyze and we look at both fighters, they have fantastic chins. We saw Adesanya just take monstrous shots from Kelvin Gastelum, who's knocked out some of the best in that division, as well as 170 pounds. And, he was still fighting strong and still managed to pull off a victory. And then we saw Paulo Costa go toe-to-toe with Joel Romero and trade ridiculous shots. I mean, these guys have just incredible chins. Yes, they have power. Yes, they have precision, but their chins are so good that I see this fight going for quite some time, definitely beyond 15 minutes.
Goes over or under for you?
Under. Way under. But I do appreciate Danny wanting that fight to go over because I wish it would. The problem is Paulo Costa has one gear, and that gear is labeled destruction. I don't see this fight going past maybe 2 rounds. And early on, I would feel like it would be Paulo Costa maybe trying to go for the knockout. But after that, it might be him getting tired and Israel picking him apart. So really, it's a great fight. I can't wait. But I think both these guys are going to take each other's best punches. It's going to come down to their chins in this one, but it's going to be an awesome one. Give me the under and give me Paulo Costa.
Oh, he's going for the underdog, Paulo Costa. George, you going for the underdog or are you going and still?
Yeah, he threw in the pick too. Okay, so I just like Danny said, I would love for this to be one of those 5-round classics, but I don't see it. I think the first round will be a little slow, but I think both guys are going to turn it on, especially Paulo Costa is going to go after it. These guys had a little friendly exchange. But I think that'll be the last one. The last 2 years, they've been running their mouths. So I think it's going to go under 3 rounds. I think it's going to end somewhere in the 3rd round. But I still got to side with Israel Adesanya.
Yeah, I'll chuck my pick in there. I think Israel Adesanya is going to pick him apart. I reckon round 3, round 4. I think it's going to be one hell of a fight, however it turns out. We have got a packed weekend for you this weekend. Cage Warriors are hosting a triple header from Manchester Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Bellator are getting back in the mix on my side of the pond in Milan, Italy on Saturday as well. Then it's the big one. UFC 253 goes down Saturday night from Fight Island in Abu Dhabi. We will bring you full coverage of all of those events throughout a jam-packed weekend of fights right here on MMA Junkie. So until next time, it's a huge thank you to Danny Segura, to Gorgeous George, to Goze, and chiefly to yourselves for checking us out. And we'll be back next week to unpack it all.